How the Grinch Stole Christmas wasn't just holiday magic, it was torture. Jim Carrey trained with a CIA expert to survive the makeup chair. 6-year-old Taylor Momsen grew up hating Christmas. The Grinch suit was literally rotting off his body, and actors threatened to walk off set every single day. These are 20 weird facts about how the Grinch Stole Christmas, where the costume was agony, child stars were broken, and the happiest movie of the year destroyed everyone who made it. Fact 1.
Well done, Max.
Max the dog was actually played by 6 different dogs in total, with the main one being a female dog named Kelly, who was rescued from a pound by Ron Howard himself. The other 5 dogs had their hair cut and dyed to look identical to Kelly. Frank Welker, who had provided vocal effects for Max in The Grinch as the Cat in the Hat, returned to do Max's sounds for the film. Kelly and the other dogs were desensitized to all the actors' makeup and costumes during pre-production training so they wouldn't be frightened by the bizarre appearances on set. Max's antlers and long floppy ears were actually a lightweight headpiece that the dogs wore throughout training so they'd be comfortable with it during filming. The dogs also wore Rudolph noses. In the movie, Max gets to swipe off the clownish red nose with his paws. For safety during the sleigh ride scenes, Kelly was strapped into the sleigh by a fur-covered harness connected by a swivel hook and rope. The rope was loose enough for movement, but tight enough to prevent the dog from slipping or jumping out. The production team went to extraordinary lengths to ensure the animal actors were comfortable and safe throughout filming. Fact 2. Jim Carrey's transformation into the Grinch was so unbearable that producer Brian Grazer hired a CIA operative who specialized in training agents to withstand torture. The makeup process took 8.5 hours on the first day, and Carrey compared it to being buried alive every single day. He kicked a hole through his trailer wall and told director Ron Howard he couldn't do the movie. Rather than lose their star, Grazer brought in this CIA specialist who spent an entire weekend teaching Carrey distraction techniques. The advice included eating everything you see, changing channels or songs constantly, having someone smack you in the head, punching yourself in the leg, and smoking as much as possible. Carrey ended up chain smoking through a long cigarette holder so his yak hair costume wouldn't catch fire. He had to endure this makeup process 92 times over the course of filming. By the end, Carrey said you could literally hit him in the face with a baseball bat and he would just say, "Good morning, how are you?" The CIA training techniques actually worked, allowing Carrey to complete one of the most physically demanding performances in cinema history. Fact 3.
Having a holly jolly Christmas.
Many of the Grinch's most memorable lines were completely improvised by Jim Carrey on the spot. The entire daily schedule monologue where the Grinch says,
6:30, dinner with me. I can't cancel that again.
was made up by Carrey. The famous tablecloth scene, where the Grinch yanks the tablecloth off his table, was also improvised. The script called for Carrey to make a total mess and spill every dish onto the ground, but he executed the tablecloth pull so perfectly that nothing fell off. The director then told Carrey to clear the table however he wanted, leading to the chaotic, sweeping motion that made the final cut. The scene where the Grinch directs Max before stealing Christmas is actually Carrey doing a perfect imitation of director Ron Howard's directing style. Carrey was literally mocking how Howard talks to actors, saying things like,
Just keep it kind of loosey-goosey.
Cut, Trent, check the gate, moving on.
Howard found Carrey's impression absolutely hilarious and decided to keep it in the movie. Carrey's genius for improvisation and his rubber-faced physical comedy elevated the material far beyond what was on the page. Fact 4.
My award. There's no check.
Before his death in 1991, Dr. Seuss consistently refused to sell the film rights to any of his books. After he died, his widow Audrey Geisel finally auctioned the rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas in July 1998, but she had incredibly strict terms. Studios had to pay $5 million up front, plus 4% of the box office gross, 50% of merchandising revenue, 70% of book tie-in profits, and all music-related income. Only directors or writers who had previously earned at least $1 million on a project were eligible to participate. Any actor considered for the Grinch had to be of similar stature to Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, or Jim Carrey. This meant the competition was limited to Hollywood's absolute elite. Multiple studios submitted pitches, including one from the Farrelly brothers and one from legendary writer John Hughes. Fox wanted Jack Nicholson as the Grinch with director Tom Shadyac. Ron Howard and Brian Grazer from Imagine Entertainment eventually won the rights. These stringent requirements ensured the first live-action Dr. Seuss adaptation would be a major studio production with A-list talent. Fact 5.
What?
Don't forget the Grinch.
7-year-old Taylor Momsen, who played Cindy Lou Who, would bring Jim Carrey his favorite Canadian chocolate bars during filming. Momsen gave Carrey Crunchies, which was his favorite Canadian treat that he couldn't easily get in the United States. Carrey joked that Momsen used to give him too much candy, so if he forgot his lines, it was because he was all hyped up from the sugar. Momsen remembered bringing him toffees, but couldn't recall the exact name of the chocolate bar years later. Carrey recalled being constantly plied with Crunchies throughout the entire production. Despite his struggles with the makeup, Carrey was extremely protective of young Momsen and constantly checking in to make sure she was okay and that she ate enough. The cast became Momsen's surrogate family, with Ron Howard being a guiding light and actors Molly Shannon and Bill Irwin becoming her surrogate parents. Momsen said she was raised in Whoville and hated going back to the hotel at the end of each night. Working with composer James Horner on her songs made Momsen realize she wanted to pursue music more than anything, ultimately leading to her rock band The Pretty Reckless. Fact 6.
I guess I could use a little social interaction.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas was the first Dr. Seuss book ever adapted into a full-length live-action feature film. Before this, Seuss adaptations had been limited to animated television specials like the beloved 1966 Chuck Jones cartoon. The 1957 children's book was only a few pages long, so the screenwriters had to massively expand the story to reach feature length. They added extensive backstory for the Grinch, showing his traumatic childhood in Whoville and explaining why he became so bitter. They created the romance between the Grinch and Martha May Whovier, played by Christine Baranski. They expanded Cindy Lou Who from a toddler who was no more than 2 in the original story into a 6-year-old girl played by 7-year-old Taylor Momsen. They added the villainous Mayor Augustus May Who as the Grinch's childhood bully. Most of the rhymes from the original book were used in the film, though some were slightly changed and new rhymes were added. Production designer Michael Korenblith studied the entire Dr. Seuss catalog to understand Seuss's evolution as an illustrator and identify his preferred shapes. The success of this film opened the floodgates for more Seuss adaptations, including The Cat in the Hat and Horton Hears a Who. Fact 7.
Cheer up, dude. It's Christmas.
Kazuhiro Tsuji, the legendary makeup artist who would later win 2 Oscars, had such a terrible experience working with Carrey that he needed professional therapy. At the beginning of production, they only completed 3 days worth of shooting after 2 weeks, because Carrey would suddenly disappear and come back with everything ripped apart. Tsuji said Carrey was really mean to everybody on set, constantly moving around and demanding touch-ups between takes, but then not wanting to be touched during scenes. On one particularly bad day, Carrey looked in the mirror, pointed at his chin, and claimed the color was different from yesterday, even though Tsuji was using the exact same color. Tsuji became so mentally exhausted that the producers allowed him to step away from filming for a week to prove how valuable he was to the production. After a week, Ron Howard called and said Carrey had sworn to change his behavior. Tsuji agreed to return, but asked for help getting a green card instead of a raise. It worked, and Tsuji became an American citizen. He later said therapy helped him realize he was really an introvert, which explained why the chaos affected him so deeply. Fact 8. Jim Carrey was paid $20 million to play the Grinch, which was an absolutely massive salary in 2000. This came on top of his payment for Man on the Moon, which he filmed simultaneously. Carrey was at the absolute peak of his box office power, coming off huge hits like The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Liar Liar, The Truman Show, and Man on the Moon. Studios were willing to pay top dollar for his unique brand of rubber-faced physical comedy. Given that the entire film's budget was $123 million, Carrey's salary represented over 16% of the total cost. Many felt he earned every penny, given the torture he endured with the makeup and costume. Carrey reportedly reminded himself daily that he was doing it for the kids, which helped him get through the ordeal. Despite the enormous paycheck, Carrey has spoken candidly about how difficult the experience was and how he learned patience through suffering. The role earned him a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Musical or Comedy, though he lost to George Clooney for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The film's massive success vindicated Carrey's huge salary. Fact 9.
I know. Harry.
Director Ron Howard actually put on the full Grinch makeup and costume himself to understand what Carrey was going through and show support for his suffering star. Howard woke up at 3:30 in the morning to get Grinchified and then directed for an entire day in the full getup. The makeup and prosthetics took about 3.5 hours to apply, plus another half hour for the suit. Howard said it was like knocking on a coffin wall and saying, "I'm still alive." However, he refused to wear the contact lenses because they weren't worth the expense to have a custom pair made for just one day. And frankly, he didn't want to wear the damn things. Carrey was having panic attacks and breathing into a paper bag due to the claustrophobia he felt in the costume. Howard's gesture got a cheap laugh from the crew and showed people he was willing to endure at least one day of what Carrey suffered through for months. This kind of director-actor solidarity is extremely rare in Hollywood. It demonstrated Howard's commitment to understanding his actor's experience and boosting morale during an incredibly difficult production. Fact 10.
The Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes.
Anthony Hopkins served as the narrator for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, taking over the role from Boris Karloff, who had narrated the 1966 animated special. Interestingly, even though everyone assumed Karloff sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" in the original cartoon, he actually didn't. That iconic song was performed by Thurl Ravenscroft, who was also the voice of Tony the Tiger for Frosted Flakes cereal for decades. For the 2000 film, Jim Carrey did his own vocal performance of "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," rather than having it sung by someone else. Hopkins brought his distinctive gravitas to the narration, giving the film a touch of class and legitimacy. The Grinch borrowed music and character elements like the green skin tone from the 1966 animated special. John Williams' father, James Horner, composed the score, and he worked directly with young Taylor Momsen on her musical numbers. The soundtrack was released on November 7th, 2000 and featured music by various artists including Busta Rhymes, Faith Hill, Smash Mouth, and NSYNC. An expanded edition featuring more of Horner's score was released in November 2022. Fact 11.
I came to see you.
Ron Howard invited his former Andy Griffith Show co-star Don Knotts to visit the set because Carrey was a huge fan who had famously impersonated Knotts in his stand-up comedy and on In Living Color. Carrey was having a terrible time with the oppressive makeup and contact lenses, and Howard could see his energy draining. One day, Howard surprised Carrey by getting Knotts to come to the set unannounced. Carrey was in full Grinch costume, standing at the top of a tall soundstage set representing the mouth of the Grinch's cave. He looked down, squinted, and saw that it was Don Knotts. Carrey immediately launched into a brilliant Don Knotts imitation while wearing the full Grinch costume, essentially doing Barney Fife as the Grinch. Howard wished the cameras had been rolling to capture this genius moment of comedy. Knotts and Carrey spent the whole afternoon getting to know each other, and Carrey was elated by the visit. Howard remembered Knotts as very unassuming and gracious. The visit successfully lifted Carrey's spirits during one of the most challenging roles of his career. Fact 12.
Ask any who, and they'll have this to say: there is no place like Whoville.
The entire world of Whoville was constructed on 11 sound stages at Universal Studios, creating one of the most elaborate practical sets in film history. Production designer Michael Kornblith drew inspiration from Orson Welles' Citizen Kane for the Grinch's Mount Crumpet lair, specifically the image of a dejected Kane being alone in the grand interiors of Xanadu with a small lonely presence in a big room. For the macro look of Whoville shown at the start of the movie, Kornblith leaned on Horton Hears a Who as reference material. The production team studied Dr. Seuss's shapes and color palettes to create a world that felt authentically Seussian. When Audrey Geisel toured the set with representatives from Random House and Universal executives, she requested a private word with Kornblith behind the set. She was embarrassed that she couldn't remember which of her husband's books the town hall was from. After a moment, she realized she didn't know which books any of the buildings were from. By employing Seuss's shapes and palettes, the team briefly persuaded his widow that Whoville had come from Ted's hand, which in many ways it did. This was the ultimate compliment to the production design. Fact 13. Jim Carrey was filming Man on the Moon, where he played comedian Andy Kaufman. At the same time, he was auditioning for The Grinch. Carrey went so deep into method acting as Kaufman that he remained in character during his Grinch audition for Dr. Seuss's widow, Audrey Geisel. Carrey later said Jim Carrey didn't exist at that time, meaning he had completely lost himself in the Kaufman character. He even spent 2 hours on the phone with Ron Howard one night discussing the Grinch project, but the entire conversation was conducted with Carrey in character as Andy Kaufman. Howard invited Mrs. Geisel to visit the set, and for a while, Carrey was talking to her like Andy. Rather than being put off by this bizarre approach, Audrey actually appreciated Carrey's commitment to both characters. She saw it as proof that Carrey could lose himself completely in a role. The method acting from Man on the Moon actually affected Carrey's performance as the Grinch, bleeding over into his characterization. This overlap between two major films created a unique and slightly unhinged energy that worked perfectly for the antisocial Christmas-hating creature. Fact 14.
Generously provided by the taxpayers of Whoville.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas had a massive production budget of $123 million, making it one of the most expensive movies of 2000. The budget covered the elaborate prosthetics and makeup, the construction of 11 massive sound stages transformed into Whoville at Universal Studios, and Jim Carrey's $20 million salary. The props department provided 1,938 candy canes, 152,000 pounds of crushed marble for fake snow, 8,200 Christmas tree ornaments, and 2 million linear feet of styrofoam just to build the city of Whoville itself. Despite the enormous budget and mixed reviews from critics, the film became a box office phenomenon. It opened with $55 million and spent 4 weeks at number 1 in the United States. The movie grossed $262 million domestically and $347 million worldwide, nearly tripling its production budget. It became the highest-grossing film of 2000 in North America and the 6th highest-grossing film worldwide that year. More importantly, it became the second highest-grossing holiday film of all time, behind only Home Alone from 1990. The financial success proved audiences were hungry for big-budget family entertainment at Christmas. Fact 15. Before Jim Carrey was cast, several other major stars were seriously considered for the role of the Grinch. Jack Nicholson was the top choice for the Fox pitch with director Tom Shadyac. Eddie Murphy was also in consideration, as were Robin Williams and Adam Sandler. These were specifically named in Audrey Geisel's requirements as the caliber of actors she would accept. Each of these actors could have brought a completely different energy to the role. Nicholson would have been darker and more menacing. Murphy would have brought his own brand of manic energy. Williams would have been more whimsical and childlike. Sandler would have been more juvenile and crude. Carrey ended up being the perfect choice because he could blend physical comedy with genuine emotion and had the energy to carry an entire film on his shoulders. The studio initially wanted Carrey to be more recognizable in the makeup, asking the makeup team to dial back their first concept. Carrey himself wanted lighter makeup at first so he could move more freely. Ultimately, the elaborate prosthetics that made the role so torturous also made the character completely believable and allowed Carrey's expressiveness to shine through. Fact 16.
You don't have a chance with her. You're 8 years old and you have a beard.
Rick Baker and Gail Rowell Ryan won the Academy Award for Best Makeup and Hairstyling for their work on How the Grinch Stole Christmas at the 73rd Academy Awards. This was deeply ironic, given how much suffering the makeup caused for everyone involved. Baker's initial concept was to simply paint Carrey green, but after leaking a test video of himself in Grinch makeup, the studio agreed to Baker's much more elaborate vision. The Grinch costume was made of yak hair dyed green and sewn onto a spandex suit. The makeup application eventually averaged 2.5 hours each day, plus another hour for removal, repeated 92 times. Carrey also had to wear uncomfortable custom yellow contact lenses, though many scenes required post-production digital alterations to color his eyes because the contacts were so painful. The film was also nominated for Best Production Design and Best Costume Design, and Carrey received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy. Despite the torture it caused, the makeup remains one of the most impressive practical effects achievements in cinema history, allowing Carrey's facial expressions to shine through the prosthetics. Fact 17.
Christmas. It's practically here.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas premiered at the Universal Amphitheater on November 8, 2000 for cast, crew, and industry insiders, including Will Smith. The film was released wide to theaters on November 17, 2000, almost 35 years after the animated TV special first aired. It opened with $55.1 million from 3,127 theaters, averaging $17,615 per screen. At the time, this was the 6th highest three-day opening weekend ever, and it set a new record for the largest opening weekend for both a Jim Carrey film and a Ron Howard film. The opening also broke the record for the highest opening weekend for a Christmas-themed film, a record it held for 18 years until the 2018 animated Grinch surpassed it. In its second weekend, the film dropped only 5.1%, setting a record for the highest-grossing second weekend ever at that time. The movie held the #1 spot at the box office for 4 consecutive weekends, making it one of only 2 films that year to achieve this feat along with Meet the Parents. Within 33 days, it became the highest-grossing film of the year domestically. Fact 18.
That's because I'm green, isn't it?
Kazuhiro, Carrey's personal makeup artist on set, had to wear a tool belt packed with supplies that weighed approximately 100 pounds so he could keep up with the constantly moving star. Carrey was always in motion between takes and required constant touch-ups, but once Carrey started a scene, he wanted to keep going and do multiple takes without interruption. Every single shot Carrey did, he tried at least 3 times or more to come up with something better, and during that time, he absolutely didn't want anyone touching him up. This meant Hiro had to be ready to jump in instantly during the brief brief windows when Carrey would allow touch-ups. The heavy tool belt contained everything hero might need for quick repairs and adjustments. Carrey's perfectionism and desire for multiple takes of every shot meant the makeup had to hold up through take after take of physical comedy. The combination of Carrey's demanding performance style and the delicate nature of the prosthetics made Hero's job incredibly challenging. Despite all the difficulty, the finished product looked flawless on screen and allowed Carrey to deliver one of his most memorable physical performances. Fact 19.
We have a spare.
After 2 weeks of filming, the production had only completed 3 days' worth of usable footage because of Jim Carrey's behavior issues. Carrey would suddenly disappear during shoots, and when he came back, everything would be ripped apart. This was partially due to his continued method acting as Andy Kaufman bleeding over from Man on the Moon. Carrey's makeup artist, Kazuhiro Tsuji, said Carrey was really mean to everybody during the early stages of production. The combination of Carrey's discomfort with the makeup and his commitment to staying in the Kaufman character created a perfect storm of production nightmares. At one point, Carrey would only respond to the name Andy, and his increasingly manic antics led producers to fear they might be sued over mental stress. The production nearly collapsed before the CIA torture specialist was brought in to help Carrey cope. Once Carrey learned the distraction techniques and Tsuji returned from his break, production got back on track. The film wrapped after 144 days of principal photography from December 9th, 1999 to May 1st, 2000. Despite all the chaos and delays, Ron Howard managed to deliver the film on time for its November 2000 release date. Fact 20.
hear a nomination?
I nominate the Grinch!
How the Grinch Stole Christmas received decidedly mixed reviews from critics when it was released. On Rotten Tomatoes, it currently holds only 49% positive reviews, and Roger Ebert gave it just 2 out of 4 stars, calling it a dank, eerie, weird movie about a sour creature. Many critics felt the production design lacked the festive brightness the material required, and that Carrey's performance, while energetic, wasn't enough to save the movie. The film was nominated for 2 Golden Raspberry Awards for Worst Remake or Sequel and Worst Screenplay. Young Taylor Momsen received 3 Stinkers Bad Movie Awards, including Worst Supporting Actress, Worst On-Screen Hairstyle, and Worst Song Performance. These criticisms seem harsh in retrospect, especially when compared to the 2018 animated Grinch, which received more positive reviews but feels far less memorable. Over the past 25 years, How the Grinch Stole Christmas has developed a massive cult following, with many families making it an annual Christmas tradition. Audiences appreciate aspects critics dismissed, like Carrey's commitment to the role, the elaborate production design, and the expansion of the original story. The film continues to perform well on streaming platforms and television during the holiday season, proving its enduring appeal despite critical dismissal. And there you have it, 20 weird and surprising facts about How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Sometimes the most torturous productions can create the most beloved results, with Jim Carrey's dedication turning a nightmare shoot into a Christmas classic that families still watch together every year.